I just find I made so many mistakes to begin with. I had no boundaries. I had no work-life balance. I would always let my clients be the boss. And the whole idea of being freelance is that you are your own boss, and that's the brilliance of it. So
Mm.
when freelance life works really well, it just can be fantastic because you can have that freedom and you can have that flexibility, and you have the opportunity to only take on the work that is going to light you up and inspire you, and therefore you do your best work.
Hello and welcome to the Good Journeys with Second Mountain podcast. This is the show that shines a spotlight on inspiring people and their inspired stories. I really hope you enjoyed today's conversation. You can join in with us on social media using the hashtag GoodJourneysPod. You can also find each and every episode in full over at our YouTube channel via the Good Journeys Pod hashtag. I'm your host, Ben Veal, the founder of Second Mountain Comms, helping good people do good. And joining me on today's show is my special guest, author, speaker, and copywriter, Sarah Townsend. For the past 2 decades and counting, Sarah has worked as a highly successful freelance copywriter, helping companies with their marketing through the use of persuasive, powerful, clear, and concise copy. As a lifelong lover of language and of the written word, Sarah has over 30 years' experience in marketing and publishing, and over 200 recommendations to her name from business owners and marketing managers alike, working with ambitious startups, global corporations, and everyone in between. Sarah believes that great copy marks the beginning of great relationships. She's now the author of 2 best-selling books, The Little Book of Confusables and The Survival Skills for Freelancers, the latter of which has already helped thousands of freelancers worldwide to grow in confidence and develop a mindset for success. Sarah, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Thank you. I'm really good. I'm kind of reeling from the swankiness of that intro. It's very impressive.
Well, these intros are very easy to write and pull together when you've got a guest that's done so much. And you and I have spoken separately, and I've really enjoyed the Survival Skills for Freelancers book in particular. As someone who set up their company a couple of years ago, felt like they didn't really know what they were doing, and has made it up as they've gone along. This is the book that I wish I'd had, back in 2020 when I was just starting out.
That's what everybody says. I wish I'd had this when I first started out.
Absolutely. So I'd love to kind of kick off there with exploring your passion for freelancing. So what is it, Sarah, that makes freelance life so exciting and appealing to you?
So I think it wasn't so much having a passion for freelancing. I think it was kind of more wanting to be realistic with people about some of the challenges of freelance life, because it can be amazing, but for so many people, it really isn't that great, because we all go into freelance life with this idea of the freedom and the flexibility, don't we? So that's kind of what draws us to freelance life. In many cases, certainly in my case, I became a parent and I wanted to find a job that would enable me to do the thing that I loved, which was the writing and the editing.
Sure.
But also to do that around having my daughter. Freelancing seemed like a really good opportunity to do that. So I first went freelance back in 1999, and I didn't have a clue what I was doing, not a clue. I didn't even know anybody who was freelance. So I didn't have anybody I could talk to. There was no social media back then. So we didn't have the joys of LinkedIn and Instagram and Twitter to kind of source other people's opinions on things. I had no idea what I was doing. So by the time I got to 2020, and this was actually before COVID hit, I got the idea of writing this book. And I just thought I would share some of the mistakes that I had made so that other people could kind of shortcut their own journey to success. Because it was only kind of after about 15, 20 years that I started to feel like I was actually pretty good at freelancing. And I just find I made so many mistakes to begin with. I had no boundaries. I had no work-life balance. I would always let my clients be the boss. And the whole idea of being freelance is that you are your own boss, and that's the brilliance of it. So when freelance life works really well, it just can be fantastic because you can have that freedom and you can have that flexibility, and you have the opportunity to only take on the work that is going to light you up and inspire you, and therefore you do your best work. So that was a very long answer to a very short question, but yeah, that was kind of the passion behind it.
Well, long answers to short questions is what this is all about, really. One thing that really jumped out at me actually as a mistake I've made, certainly in freelance life, and I'm working around now, is you talk in a book about swapping one boss, as in leaving employed life, for lots and lots of little bosses.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that, and how does one avoid getting caught in that trap?
So, like I say, when you go freelance, you are effectively your own boss. But what happens is that quite often we are so desperate for work to come in to begin with that we just say yes to everything. So we say yes to work, whether it's a good fit with our skill set, our experience, our availability. Even we'll say yes when we're already fully booked because we're sort of desperate to build our reputation and to get our name out there and to get the income ultimately. And what we quite often do is, because we're so keen on saying yes, we don't really think about our own boundaries and what actually works for us. And it's really important to keep that in mind, because the idea of being your own boss is that you are working on your terms.
Sure.
And that's not a negative for your clients. It's actually a positive, because when you know what works for you, when you're doing your best work, when you are your most inspired, we don't go freelance to work 9 to 5. We come out of the 9 to 5. We can work whatever hours we want. You could start at 6 a.m. and finish at 2 every day. You could just work mornings. You could just do 4 days a week, which is what I do. I don't work Fridays. And ultimately, your clients don't mind what hours you're working or what the details are behind the scenes. They just need to know that they can trust and rely on you to get the job done on time and within budget. So it's more helpful for your clients if you can be super clear with them about how you work and just make their life easier by sort of saying, okay, so when we work together, this is what will happen. This is what you can expect. And by actually saying to them, so, for example, one really specific example is I use an autoresponder, not just for holidays, but every single day of my freelance life. So it will say something like, thanks for getting in touch. I check my emails just a couple of times a day so I can focus on writing hardworking copy for my clients. I'll get back to you soon. So that might sound inconvenient to your client, but actually what it's doing is it's giving them reassurance that you've received their message, it hasn't gone to junk, that you'll get back to them later. It's telling them that you prioritize active clients and that they can expect the same service when you're working for them. So it sends this kind of secret signal that you're not somebody who's just going to get distracted left, right, and center. Every time a message comes in, every time a notification or a little pop-up on your phone, you're not going to get pulled off task. You're going to be doing your best work for them. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about when I'm talking about setting boundaries and making it work for you. Because if you can tell your clients that this is the way you work, that's going to make their life easier. They know that they don't need to keep checking in to see how you're doing. You get less micromanagement, more hands-off clients who are happy to trust you and really relate to you on the same sort of basis. So rather than they're the client up here and you're the lowly supplier down here and they're telling you what to do, which is very much a kind of traditional employed model. You're actually working together on a partnership basis. There's mutual trust and mutual respect, and that's the way for a happy freelance life.
And have you found that that's become easier as the years have gone on? Like, do you feel that you're now at a point where you've kind of got this nailed, but it took a while to get there?
It took ages to get there. I had no idea that I could just tell other people that this was the way I worked. And I found that my clients are actually far happier to just let me get on with the work as a result of knowing. So if you can be really clear at the start when you're sort of setting your terms out, and you're kind of giving them an idea of exactly how it works to work with you. How does it feel to work with me? What's it like going through a project working with a professional copywriter? Because a lot of people who come to me have never worked with a copywriter before. They have no idea what to expect. It's up to me to give them that clarity of this is how it works. It's really easy. It's really straightforward. These are the touch points. This is when you send the draft to me or the background information. This is when you can expect to receive a first draft. When you receive the first draft, this is what happens. That's actually making their life easier. If you put yourself in the position of a client, you're working with a new business. Say, for me, I need to get a battery fitted on my solar panels. I have no idea how that works. I would want the business to come back to me and say, okay, so you pay us 50% deposit. We will then book in a date for the installation. This is going to take this long. This is what you can expect. I feel reassured. It's managing your client's expectations.
It's interesting because I came from, 15 plus years of 9 to 5 and moving into freelance life has taken me probably 2.5 years to really start to understand what you're talking about here now.
Okay, that's excellent. That's
I'm
excellent progress. It took me like 12.
Well, I'm getting there. Books like yours have helped, but it's kind of understanding and having conversations with other people about how they work and how they set those boundaries. Because I'm so used from being an account director within a busy PR agency to always being available, always being on, having my mobile available at 9 o'clock at night, being available at weekends. It's just part and parcel of that. And when I made the decision to go freelance, it was doing away with that kind of life and saying I'm not going to be available. We were talking off air before we came on today about both having a long Christmas break. I haven't had a long Christmas break in 15 years where I've completely switched off and disconnected from emails and social media, and it was wonderful.
And it's so good for you, isn't it?
So good.
It's not us being lazy or it's good because it restores your productivity, your focus, your creativity. It's like recharging your batteries. It's such an important thing. And of course, there are freelancers out there who still do my phone's always on at weekends. You can always get hold of me, whatever time of day. That's fine if that works for you. But I found that I was very close to burnout when I did that. My marriage broke up, and I'm not saying the fact that it was to do with the fact that I had no boundaries, but it absolutely did not help. I had 2 small children, a marriage on the rocks, trying to say yes to everybody, and it just doesn't work. No. I couldn't do my best work. You're always kind of struggling with this. Having too much to do just means that nobody gets the best of you in your personal life and your working professional life. So it took me so many years, Ben. I mean, like 2.5 years for me feels like nothing because it took me so long to have those realizations. And a lot of it came from actually when social media evolved and starting to connect with other freelancers and realizing that there were other ways of doing things. So that's partly why I wrote the book, because I didn't want other people to make those mistakes. I don't want other people to have failing relationships and difficulties and low mental health and low physical health. It's not a nice way to be. That is not what freelance life is about. Freelance life is supposed to be awesome. We just sometimes need to find the way to deal with the challenges so that we know how to tackle those things when they arise, and they will arise. They always do.
So, yeah, it's really interesting because I think one of the things for freelance life is that this idea of success is very subjective and very different to everyone. So this really jumped out at me in your book. You talk quite a lot about what it means to be successful, both in business, but also in life. You talk specifically about the idea of adopting a mindset to achieve your definition of success, but without neglecting your own well-being and your mental health.
Yeah.
So kind of 20 years into this game, what does success mean to you, Sarah?
Gosh. Okay. So I kind of think that to begin with, I was defining success in traditional terms, as in, was I making enough money? Was my income increasing every year? And yes, it was. That's great. But as I said already, I didn't have the balance or the boundaries, and my mental and physical health was suffering as a result. So for me now, it's about earning more than I need so that I'm financially comfortable. I can have multiple holidays. I'm not concerned about taking off 6 weeks, 8 weeks, a year. I can work 4 days a week and have Fridays to meet up with friends and do some of the other things that I love doing. And then that means that the 4 days a week, I am saying yes to the right work, the work that brings joy to my life, the work that fulfills me and inspires me. I get to work with great people who are quite like-minded, and it feels as if I'm just working with friends. It feels as if I'm working with people who I really admire, I trust, I respect, I enjoy their company. They find working with me fun. It's all those good things that kind of feed into one another. So yes, I have a lovely car, and that is probably my one luxury that comes through my business. I have a really good pension. I prioritize that from the start, probably because when I was 19, I was working in financial services. So I couldn't, I kind of started believing the hype. I was writing, my first marketing job was writing kind of cost of delay and mortality statistics, sales aids for our sales advisors. So just I started to kind of drink the Kool-Aid, and I've got all the financial stuff sort of sorted. And obviously that is so important as well for freelancers, because you need to take care of your own finances. Nobody else is going to do it for you. Nobody else really does it when you're employed, do they? But the benefits are greater. So you have to make sure that you have those financial priorities in line. Make sure you've got savings. That's a really important thing, because you never know. The peaks and troughs are inevitable. It's probably only after about 15 years that those really went away for me. But yeah, always kind of be on top of your marketing, always be on top of your pipeline. Make sure that you don't get sort of sucked into this, oh, I'm busy. I've got no time to market my business. I've got no time to show up on social media. Those things, within reason. Obviously, you're not going to have too much time to focus on those things, but it's important to put time aside. I realize I've gone massively off tangent.
No, but it's interesting, because I was going to ask about social media. I mean, you are, you are, if you don't mind me saying, you are all over social media. You're a bit of a social guru. But how are you? How do you discipline that? You've talked a lot about balancing your emails, but how are you balancing your, social media and promotional time?
First off, I'm not a guru of anything. I would never use that word, but I am pretty experienced, I suppose. So yeah, I know what you mean about being all over social media. I love LinkedIn. I think if anybody listening to this podcast can only do one social media platform, because that's all they can manage, I would 100% make it LinkedIn. It's not, if you're not especially a power user of LinkedIn right now, it's not what you expect. I think people have this expectation that it's just, we're delighted to announce that we have been awarded such and such. It's not like that now. Sure, there are people out there who still do these kinds of posts. If you get posts from people that are just me and really uninspiring, just hide their posts. You don't need to unfollow people. But I think with all the social media platforms, you get the experience that you curate for yourself. So curate and create. By following the right people. A lot of people are incredibly down on Twitter. I mean, let's pretend the last 6 weeks in Twitter haven't happened, but people are down on how political it is, or how there's so much negativity. I've never experienced that. I've created lists for the people whose tweets I want to see, because I find them inspiring and motivating and thought-provoking. They challenge me, but not in a negative way. So how do I manage my time on social media? That's probably my weak spot, because I love it so much. I am not as good at managing the time I spend on there as I should be. I don't have a content plan. Social media marketers and managers would be horrified. I don't schedule my content. I do on Twitter have kind of a funnel of regular tweets that go around every so often, but I supplement that with just me, really. I am my business, so I very strongly believe that you shouldn't have a business persona and the real you. It should be merged. It's really important, because if you have this business persona and then your clients get to know you, I mean, there's this kind of sense of like a discombobulation, because they're not sure who they're getting. And I'm saying that from experience, because the first however many years I was working for myself, I felt that I had to be a certain way, I had to dress a certain way, I had to speak a certain way, even had to write a certain way. And a lot of my clients, I do copy coaching sessions now for people who are not in a position to be able to afford to work with me as a copywriter. So it's a little bit like the analogy of give a person a fish and they'll eat one decent meal, but teach them to fish and they'll eat well forever kind of thing. It's like,
Sure.
I can teach people how to improve their copy so they can do it themselves.
Yeah.
And this is the sort of thing that I'm always almost, I feel as if I'm giving them permission to if you wouldn't say it, don't write it. Like, who actually says we would like to apologize for any inconvenience caused? We just say
No.
sorry. I'm such a firm believer in human language and being human in general. And again, a tangent. That's what you can expect when you talk to me, Ben. Sorry.
I've been hugely encouraged, Sarah. I think you can't attribute it all to COVID, but definitely there was a sea change. If we're talking about LinkedIn, it's almost like the platform, there was a movement in, say, 2018, 2019, where mental health was starting to be more on the agenda of LinkedIn and people were starting to have those conversations. We were seeing that much more in the world of PR, for example. But it was suddenly when the pandemic happened that it felt like platforms really took on much more of an authentic air. Yeah. And I would echo what you said about LinkedIn. Like, but the last couple of years, it's been a joyful place to be on. I mean, I've built nearly all of my business, all of my valuable contacts have been through LinkedIn. I think a lot of it because I've brought my authentic self to it. And as you were saying, probably for 15 years, there was the professional PR self. And then suddenly that professional PR self merged with the real Ben, the one that's always really been there. And now people are buying from me.
Yeah. And that is the loveliest thing.
Yes.
That's proper validation. That's not they're buying from this kind of persona that you've created, and well done you for creating this persona. This is they're seeing you and they're wanting to work with you, and that's gratifying. It ties into him. I talk a lot in survival skills for freelancers, as you know, about imposter syndrome, and I've done so much training on imposter syndrome since webinars and talks and this kind of thing, because it's something that everybody can relate to, whether they admit to it or not. 87% of UK professionals in a survey admitted to feelings of imposter syndrome. And the more I've talked about it through doing my training, the more I've realized that a big element of avoiding imposter syndrome is being yourself, because the huge factor of imposter syndrome is that people fear they're going to be found out. But how can you be found out if you are being you?
Yeah.
There's less of a margin between the you that you're presenting, the closer you can get to actually being 100% real you, true you in your interactions with your colleagues, your contacts, your clients, the less chance you have of experiencing imposter syndrome.
I mean, I think a lot of that is kind of in your kind of traditional hierarchical kind of corporate structure. It's all based around titles. It's all based around power. And it's about kind of working your way up a ladder. When you become freelance, certainly when you become a freelance consultant, as you and I are, you've kind of stripped that out, because you're just you providing a very specific service, as you say, as a partner. And so that power dynamic, I think, shifts quite radically with freelance life into an organization. That's been my experience anyway. The other thing that I'd kind of echo from what you're saying, from my experiences about being you and being authentic, is for me, I had a very clear idea of the kind of people I wanted to work with, which was essentially nice people who are trying to do good in the world. It's that simple.
Likewise.
Yeah. So that really helps me with the conversations I have, because if I'm very authentic and if I talk about whatever it may be, the challenges of parenting, anxiety, mental health, things like this, people have got I think, a fairly clear image of me from the start in terms of where I am with life, the mountains I've climbed, the journey I've been on, and the kind of character I am. And if that's not a character they want to work with or buy from, then great, because that eliminates a whole dynamic that I don't want to deal with. So I think one advice I would give for people who maybe are thinking about going freelance but are currently employed is there's a lot of benefits to being employed, because under employment you do have the safety net of learning what you like and specifically what you don't like, so that when you do move into freelance life, because I thought to go in freelance 15 years ago, and I'm glad I didn't, apart from dabbling in it, because by the time I went into it, I had a very, very clear idea of how I didn't want to work. Not so much how I did want to work, but definitely what I didn't want to. Yeah. And that's been a real guiding principle for me over the last 2+ years. Not that I haven't fallen into many of the traps you're describing, and not that I'm sure I won't continue to fall into those, imposter syndrome being a big one. But it pays to know, I think, who you are and what you want out of life. But in the book, you talk about how you're quite clear that freelance life isn't for everyone. It's not this perfect lifestyle that suits all. And you've actually said in the book, some people do need to be managed. They need a clear list of priorities. They need encouragement and incentive to achieve allocated tasks on time. What do you feel are the essential attributes to make it as a freelancer in today's quite uncertain world?
Resilience.
Yeah.
People have said, and I think I mentioned this in the book as well, actually, people who've said throughout my freelance life, I need to have a thick skin. And I don't have a thick skin. I identify as being a highly sensitive person, which is actually a thing, but I don't find that holds me back. I think it's important to realize that you shouldn't take rejection personally when it's professional. That's, again, a harder thing to achieve when you are being you in business, because everything feels personal. But certainly things like being a self-starter, so being self-motivated, being disciplined, driven, having focus, when, particularly when you're working at home. I usually go out and work in my second office. That's what I'm doing after we've had our chat today, which is the lounge bar at my gym. And I find for so many freelancers, if you can find a co-working space or a cafe or somewhere that you can work without the distractions of, oh gosh, the dishwasher needs to be loaded, or the washing needs to be hung, whatever it is that distracts you at home, kids, dogs, post for your neighbors, whatever it is, all those things are really important. So the more you can be focused and driven, but you also have to be prepared to be out there. I have a very good friend who had a change of career path to become a personal trainer, and she stopped within 6 months. She just decided self-employment wasn't for her, because she's an excellent personal trainer, but she's incredibly introverted and could not bear the fact that she had to put her head above the parapet to get her business known. You have to be prepared to raise awareness of your business and the problems that you solve for your clients and who you solve those problems for. You have to be prepared to go out there and be visible, be seen, talk about the problems you solve, not in a salesy way, not in a cringy way, but certainly in a way that can feel outside your comfort zone. And I find particularly in, say, a lot of copywriters are very introverted. I've come to the conclusion, I thought that I grew up incredibly shy. I was always told, oh, she's very shy, she's very quiet. But when I started work in the corporate world in financial services, and then did much like you. I ended up in working in an agency, and I had to be a certain way to progress, as you said. And I think I just masked kind of being naturally probably quite an introvert, and grew to become very sociable. But only really recently, and it's actually only been since COVID, have I realized that when I put myself into a social situation, yes, I'm now comfortable in that situation. I'm very comfortable at the right networking events. I'm very comfortable talking to other people about what they offer, probably more so than talking about what I offer, actually. But I think that's just as important, and it's quite an underused skill. But when I get home from giving a talk or running a workshop or whatever, I need to lie down in a darkened room for a couple of hours to recover, because that's how I recharge. Self-awareness is a really important thing, because there are plenty of traits that I say in the book aren't necessarily going to make your life especially easy as a freelancer. But if you know what those traits are, you have that awareness, there's something that you could choose to work on to improve. So self-development is really important, being kind of aware that you need to always be learning, you need to always be developing and improving, and this sort of thing. So being aware of each of your, what you might call a negative trait. So for me, I'm incredibly impatient. I have this, it's like an anomaly. I'm a very keen bird watcher. And when I
Okay.
go out into the forest with my binoculars, I can stand for just an endless amount of time waiting to see a particular bird. And my partner was laughing about it the other day because I always say, I'm so impatient. I'm such a just do it now person. I can't understand if something can be done in the next 5 minutes, just do it in the next 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Why say, oh, I'll do it tomorrow? But the good side of being an impatient person is that I get things done. I am that immediate person. I do make things happen. So, whatever trait you have that you think may hold you back as a freelancer, think about what the flip side is. See the trait as the dark side. What is the light side of that trait? Every negative has a positive. So, can you kind of create something positive from that thing that you're concerned might hold you back? I think it's really only when you have perhaps a number of traits that you can't get up and get going in the morning, or that that's perhaps a character trait rather than
Mm.
behavior. Because we all go through phases where we're demotivated, we don't want to get
Yeah.
out in the morning. Mental health issues can cause that. But if you're someone who just doesn't like to get up and get going, you're someone who isn't good at I'm not good at setting goals, I can't say that, but someone who isn't good at kind of motivating yourself and having the inspiration to kind of come up with new ideas and try new ways of doing things, experiment, then it's only when you have a bunch of those traits that you may struggle to make it as a freelancer.
Yeah, and I think it's also about kind of knowing your natural rhythms, isn't it? And your body. So I spent 15 years doing 9 to 5. That never worked for me. I knew it never worked for me. I was always frustrated. I was always at work tired. I was always exhausted by the time I got to the office at 9, not really feeling motivated and ready to go because of the very structure of that morning. I've learned about myself that I am someone who before 10 a.m. isn't really, I'm great for conversation, but
Yeah.
my attention span on say a written task isn't there until mid-morning. I am a night owl. I do my best copywriting 7 p.m. onwards.
So
I've structured my working day often around family, admin marketing pieces in the morning, conversations like we're having now, and doing hard, deep concentration, focused work in an afternoon or evening. That's the kind of thing which, when you're working under for an employer, or if you're not careful with certain boundaries as a freelancer, or as you say, for lots of mini employers, that if you're not careful, your natural ebbs and flows can be dictated by others. And I think that's what I've learned as a freelancer, is you have to know what works for you, how you will produce your best work, but also how you'll be happiest. And for
amen to that.
me, happiness comes through knowing I've had good quality time with my family at key pockets in the day and I've been present. It comes from looking after my physical health and actually going out for a walk or going to the gym. And it comes from actually turning my phone off in the evening sometimes. But this is all stuff that sounds great in principle, but when you're financially concerned, when businesses are lean, when you're going for a famine period, which is so part and parcel of freelance life,
Yeah.
it's very hard. It's very easy for these things to go out of a window. I could easily talk to you all day about freelance work, but I also want to come back to your new book, which is the brilliantly titled Little Book of Confusables.
I have both here with me, actually.
Oh, there you go. So do I. There you go. Look, thanks so much.
Oh, look, we should do a screen grab at the end.
We will. So can you explain to our audience what the Little Book of Confusables is all about and who it will benefit?
Yeah, so many people who have read it and loved it have told me that it will benefit anybody who ever writes anything. In fact, Leif Kendall, who is the director of Pro Copywriters, the professional body for copywriters, described it as a perfect book for anyone who reads, writes, or speaks. So I
That's a
make
good
that
audience.
everyone.
Yeah.
And so far, to my knowledge, not everyone has a copy. So I would say certainly business owners, professionals who work with words, anybody who ever has to write blog posts for their business or social media content for their business, LinkedIn posts, emails, and want to look professional and want to avoid the stupid mistakes that even smart people make. So those are things like using the wrong version of bear. So bear with me. The number of times I've seen it spelled BARE with me, which literally means get naked. So it's those kinds of things. It is based on, I mean, it's gorgeous inside. I'm not sure if I think you use the video, but typographically, it's gorgeous. It's a lovely book to use. It's dinky and it's quite chunky as well. So it's got almost 600 commonly confused words, from the obvious ones like the different versions of there and your and let's and principle, practice, license, all those words that can trip us up on a daily basis. And language professionals too, we have the blind spots. Everybody has the blind spots. I have so many people who've come to me and gone, oh my gosh, I bought this book just because I was intrigued because you're a fellow copywriter. I didn't think I was really going to need it, but I have dipped into it multiple times a day, every day since I've had it. And also, when I first got it, I read it cover to cover and I never knew I'd been using this word wrong, or I never knew that I had been writing off your own back where it was actually off your own bat. So it contains things like doggy dog world and jester of goodwill and those kind of mishearings, as well as things like libelous and slanderous, acute and chronic, poisonous and venomous. So how often do we actually know the subtle but important differences between those words? And we use them as interchangeable, and they're actually not. So it's a really fun guide. Yes, it's a book about language. Yes, it's effectively a reference book about spellings, but it's a really fun book. Some of the examples are kind of thrown in there for good measure. Like one of them, for example, I have trouble saying this: torturous, tortoise, and tortoro. So there are a few kind of pop culture references thrown in there for good measure. But
I love it. I mean, you mentioned, this is my favorite. You mentioned it earlier, but so dog eat dog. The phrase dog eat dog world means brutal, ruthless, and competitive. It's commonly misheard as doggy dog. Alas, doggy dog world is not a thing, but if a canine brand hasn't seized the idea for their annual expo yet. I love it. I mean, it's brilliant. I mean, there are plenty in here that have been very helpful for me already as someone who's been writing for 15 years. And it's we were going to record this pre-Christmas, and I would, as a perfect stocking filler, Christmas 2023 is not far away. Still a perfect stocking filler, but just generally a brilliant book for anyone, I think, who has a love of language, and it just kind of answers those commonly asked questions. I'm curious, are there any words that kind of, when you were researching the book, caught you by surprise? Did you realise that you've been making some mistakes over the years?
Yeah, loads. I mean, I still have to, I take my copy. I mean, this copy is so well thumbed. It's a really scruffy one. This is an Amazon one. If anybody ever buys off me, they get a proper litho printed version signed. And they're kind of even nicer quality than this, but this is well thumbed because I take this with me because it's chunky and dinky. It fits in my laptop case. I take it with me. So when I'm working at the gym, I have it on my desk all the time. It's quite a nice conversation starter. If people say, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I wrote this. And then everybody flicks it and they're like, oh, I'm going to go and order a copy. But yeah, no, there are loads I still have to look up. I can't think of an example off the top of my head. Rain. When the Queen died, there was so much in the press, people using the wrong spelling of the Queen's reign. You'd think they would have checked it first, would you not?
Probably didn't help that she died on a rainy day.
Oh, did she in fact? Gosh. No, but I'm thinking like REIN and REIGN.
Yeah.
Those are the things that actually, I mean, a lot of people, I had an author who's written 7 novels say, I never knew there were 2 different versions of, what was it? Discreet.
Okay, yeah.
Discreet as in, separate, and discreet as in, right, don't tell anyone kind of thing. So yeah, hoard and hoard, gaff and gaff. I mean, there are so many in there, but I mean that it's not a comprehensive. It's not as comprehensive a book as I would have liked, because if it had been, it would have been twice the thickness.
Yeah.
As it is, the pagination means I only make £3.31 a copy. If anybody's thinking about self-publishing, think first about how much you actually make, because don't write a book to get rich. It's not going to happen. But I didn't do that with either of mine. I wrote both of them to help people and to entertain people. I have been keeping a list, so show exclusive. I've been keeping a list since I was working on this, and my son did the layout. So my designer friend set up the template. We came up with the idea for what we wanted to look like. My designer friend came up with the grid, and then my son taught himself InDesign. to work on it
Fantastic.
with me before he went off to uni to study English. Proud mum.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, it is lovely. But we got to the stage where I kept saying, oh no, we've forgotten to include this versus this. And he said, Mum, you're just going to have to draw the line because we're over 300 pages. I think it's 320 pages. It's quite a chunky book. I said, okay, right, I'm going to draw the line, but I'm going to keep a note on my phone just in case any more crop up. Well, that note is now at 300 plus additional Confusables. So I can safely say there will be a Confusables 2, and I might be spelling it TOO.
Excellent. Oh, that's exciting. That's brilliant.
Just to make the title of Confusables.
We'll put in the show notes today. You'll find all the links to buy both of Sarah's books. And also, if you are listening on the audio, we are on YouTube. Just search for the hashtag Good Journeys Pod, and you'll be able to find Sarah. See her lovely face and also see lots of examples of the book as we've been talking through today. Just to round out here today, Sarah, I'd love to know, kind of from your 20 plus years experience, is there one key ingredient to creating great copy?
Oh gosh.
Big question, isn't it?
One key ingredient. Well, I always say when I'm doing my copy coaching sessions and I'm doing training talks about copywriting, I always say think about the 4 C's. So maybe I'll share my 4 C's instead of just one element, because I think it's a lot more than one element.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for me, it's really important that copy reflects your brand. And when we're talking about businesses like ours, Ben, we are our brand. So it's really important for the copy to feel authentic to the person who is behind the brand. So it's all about human language for me. It's all about, there are so many. I actually have a tweet lined up for this morning. For those who are listening, I'm getting out my phone. I'm going to find an image on my phone that I took a photo of. So one of the sinks in my gym is not working. There's a sign in the sink that says, member notice, this sink is currently not in use. We're working hard to get this back in working order as soon as possible. We apologise for the inconvenience caused. And I've just edited it. And I'm just putting it out as a tweet, and just it's a 9-word tweet instead of, that's 29 words. And I just think what they could have said instead was, we're sorry this sink isn't working. It'll be fixed soon.
Yes.
That's all you need to say. And it's much more human. It feels like it's been written by a person and not a robot. So for me, good copy should always be conversational, because that's the way that we make a connection, a direct human connection with our reader. It should always be compelling / convincing. So it's going to be something that is encouraging your reader to take action, to change their mind, to think differently, to maybe book your course or hire your services or buy your product. It's going to be clear and it's going to be concise. So the fewer words you use, make sure that when you've written anything, go back, free tips, go back over what you've written and make sure that every word in that sentence is justifying its place there, because there are usually so many filler words that just get in the way of your message. It's really important to just acknowledge that your reader is super busy. We're all busy. We're all subjected to, I read the other day, between 4,000 and 10,000 marketing messages a day. Don't actually know how that's possible, but that is the statistic that this study came up with. So have respect for the fact that your reader is busy. There are dozens of competing messages that you are up against, and for your business to get noticed, you have to cut through that chatter, that communication chatter. And it's really important to just think about making sure that your message gets to the point. When I first wrote Survival Skills, one of the Amazon reviews said, this is one of my favorites, so this is why I've memorized it. It's refreshing to read a book by a proper copywriter who knows how to get the message from the page to the brain with the least resistance. And for me, that's what it's all about. It's about getting your message, getting your words from the screen or the page to your reader's brain with the least resistance.
Yeah, and for me as a writer, it's always about, is this something I'd want to read? Does this grab me? If I'm not interested, they won't be interested.
No,
And it doesn't matter.
absolutely.
It doesn't matter what subject matter you're talking about. Like you, I've written about everything over the years, but
Yeah,
it's always about trying to find the personality, the human angle, the interesting bit, the relatability. If that's
yeah.
not there, I'm not interested. My reader won't be. Um, I would love to know a couple of things actually before we round out. Firstly, there's a real art form and a skill and a nuance to good copywriting. Do you have any concerns about kind of the power that AI is going to have
Oh
on the
my
writing
God, of
profession?
course.
Mm.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think that the important thing to kind of acknowledge, I mean, Chat GPT seems to be rocking everybody's world right now.
Hmm.
But I think ultimately AI is a tool, and a tool in the wrong person's hands is still not going to produce a good job. I'm not sure what's going to happen really, but I'd like to think there'll still be a place in the world for copywriters. You and I are both out of a job if not, but
Yeah.
yeah, of course, it's a concern, it's a worry. I'm naturally a born worrier, so it's just another thing for me to worry about. But the thing is, an AI can never provide your clients with the human understanding, the relationship, the support, the ongoing kind of fun of working with someone who really gets your business and really cares about
Yeah.
your business. Because I think for me, a lot of my clients say, I did a survey actually really long ago, maybe even 8, 10 years ago. I did a survey with some of my clients who I'd worked with for a really long time, and I thought, I'll ask them to come up with 5 words. What are the 5 words that you would use to describe working with me? And I thought it was going to be, she's great at grammar. She knows lots of words. I thought it was going to be more kind of practical things. And it was all, she just gets my business. It's like she can pull the words out of my head and make me sound like me, but better.
Yeah.
And she's fun to work with. And it was all these kinds of things that were just unexpected. And the way I see it, and AI is never going to be able to provide any of those things.
No, because it's come down to partnership, as we said early on, isn't it? It's about really understanding who you're working with, what they're looking to do, the people they are, and kind of playing that forward. And I think AI, yes, AI will no doubt,
Has a
as we're
place.
seeing, has the ability and has a place to cover a lot of gaps, but it doesn't allow for this kind of nuance and this kind of professional communication. But I think can only ever come through human to human interaction.
Yeah.
He
Mm.
says and hopes. Otherwise, as you
Yeah,
say,
I
me and you both
know.
need to find other employment. But
Yeah.
the last thing I'd love to ask is to finish up with is, we've touched on this already, but there'll be a lot of listeners today who will have tuned in because they're considering going solo and pursuing a freelance career themselves. I mean, it can be a massively daunting and terrifying step, but as we've covered today, it can also be a wonderful step to take. Are there a couple of kind of takeaway bits of advice you can offer in terms of kickstarting a freelancing journey in the right way?
Yeah, I think every single one of the 60 plus podcasts I've done, they always ask that question at the end. And every time I have to say something completely different because otherwise every podcast is going to sound the same. I mean, the really obvious thing, and I'm kind of not even really being tongue in cheek, is spend your first £15 on a copy of Survival Skills for Freelancers, because it's got not just 20 years of my freelance experience that you can learn from, but it also contains quotes, case studies, and advice from 100 other freelancers who I interviewed in the process of writing the book. So it's crowdsourced an awful lot of real world, heart on your sleeve. This is the bones of what you really need to know. So I genuinely would say start with that. But in terms of kind of awareness, I think it's important to know that it's not enough just to be good at your chosen skill. So your secret sauce, or your whatever people call it these days, I call it my superpower. So editing and copywriting are my superpower, but that's not enough. There's so much other stuff around being a freelancer, being your own boss. And this is all the stuff that I think people overlook. They think, okay, well, I'm a great graphic designer and therefore I will be a great graphic designer freelancer. Not the case. There's so much business side. And these are the 8 myths that I bust in Survival Skills for Freelancers. It is the things like, trying to do everything yourself for your business is the fast train to burnout. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
So when you first start out, you'll realize just how much of your week is spent doing admin, accounts, marketing your business, social media management, finding clients, emailing clients, project management, all those things. You can really easily get to the end of the week and feel like perhaps you've only spent 20-30% of your time doing this special skill.
And also, I'd just add to that a really key part of that, which I think can be easily looked over if you're not careful, is nurturing the client relationships that you've worked so hard to gain, because you're spending so much time always looking 5 steps ahead and doing your admin and doing your marketing. Remembering that actually you really need to put a lot of time into the work that you've won and making sure that they're happy and making sure that they feel like they're getting added value from you.
It's that is a really important thing. In terms of one thing, I would say back yourself with some savings, because it can be a really long time before you ever get paid for a job. So say worst case scenario, your first day of freelancing, you're putting the feelers out there, you're marketing, you're telling people what you're doing, you're raising awareness of your business. You might secure your first client, if you're dead lucky, within the first month. Then you have to do the work, which might take a month, and then you have to invoice, which might take another month, and then another month to get paid. So it can take a really long time. I would recommend charging 50% deposit up front. That's just a very specific, very small tip. But if you do it from day one, it's much easier to get used to. I didn't do it until about year 15, and I never once had a client object. Not once. So I would definitely get yourself some savings so that you've got some money to kind of dip into, to invest in your business, to make sure that you've got the right kit, and just to sort of support you through the lean times, because the lean times are kind of inevitable. Just keep marketing, keep putting the word out there, keep showing up and being visible.
And if there's any payment's a good one, because if there's any organizations listening who are thinking about working with freelancers, I'm sure Sarah would agree with this. My top bit of advice would be pay your freelancers on time, because if you pay them on time, they'll be really good to you. And it still shocks me. I mean, I've been very lucky broadly on that basis, but it still shocks me how lax people can be at paying invoices. And I've heard it time and time again from so many people. Deposits up front, 50% up front, just again to give you that financial security, to give real focused time to your clients. But I would I'd reinforce kind of what Sarah said. I mean, Survival Skills for Freelancers, it's such a great book, but what I think makes it so great is it's a real book that's kind of brought together and seems to have really struck a chord with the freelance community.
It's
many
sold,
people,
Ben, in 28 countries.
It's amazing. Such an amazing achievement. I hope you're really proud of that.
Yeah, I absolutely am.
Yeah. I think, it's a book that's, it's just full of energy. It's full of really practical, quick takeaways, very accessible. I saw through it in about 2 days, which, with 2 young kids around, I think is a testament to how good it is. And, it's very, very well thumbed and will be living on my desk for years to come as a reminder that every time I get a bit caught up and burnt out, to just go back to the basics. So last thing really, Sarah, firstly to say thank you so much for coming on today and for your enthusiasm and for all of the good you're doing for the freelance community. How can our audience keep in touch with you? What are your websites and your socials?
Best thing to do, I used to give out this huge list of all the different socials, but probably the best thing to do is to go to Sarah Townsend editorial.co.uk. There you'll find links to my social media, you'll find links to where to buy my books, you can find out more about my copy coaching, my copywriting, and that's probably everything.
Well, brilliant. Well, look, I'm so excited it's been wonderful getting to know you for the last couple of years. I'm so excited to see where your journey takes you next.
Thank you.
And thank you for being such a great guest today. Any last words, Sarah?
No, it's just been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me on.
Thank you. Well, thanks to my brilliant guest, Sarah Townsend, for today's wonderful conversation. If you've liked today's show, then please do share it with others who might benefit from the conversation too. And don't forget to let us know what you think using the hashtag GoodJourneysPod on all social media. All past episodes of the show are available now via our website, which is secondmountaincoms.co.uk/podcast. And of course, we're on Spotify, Google and Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Amazon Music, and pretty much anywhere else you turn to for your podcasting fix. So that's it. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been the Good Journeys with Second Mountain podcast. So until next time, let's keep climbing together, and I'll see you all again soon.